program contains material that viewers may find unsuitable for younger children. A parental control system is advised. The following program contains opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed without any censorship and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Good evening and welcome to TPS, the Public Square on Other Derana News Channel, where we discuss about the most relevant and pressing conversations that shape the political landscape of Sri Lanka. Now, today's discussion is all about the recent talk of the town, which is also after the visit of the IMF mission to Sri Lanka in terms of the post-cyclone Ditwa, the rapid financing instrument that was provided by the IMF, along with what we were going ahead, which is the EFF, the Extended Fund Facility. So to discuss as to if this situation is something that we are thinking of in terms of a positive aspect or a liability in terms of the economic and the fiscal behavior of Sri Lanka, to discuss on this topic, we have two gentlemen over here. Towards my right, I have Mr. Eran Wickramaratne representing the Samaki Jana Balawegaya. Welcome you.
Thank you.
And also towards my left, I have Mr. Barath Arulsamy from the Tamil Progressive Alliance. Welcome you as well. All right, gentlemen. So today's topic is, I believe, broad in nature, but then again with the recent situations and also the discussions which we are breaking down as to IMF emergency funding and Sri Lanka's economic sovereignty, if it is a lifeline or a liability. So first I will get into Mr. Barath. Now, when it comes to this current situation, I believe, do you think, I think the topic itself has a question. I'm going to get into that point itself. Now, do you consider, let's keep the Cyclone Ditwa situation aside, and also the situation we were before the Cyclone Ditwa happened, and we were getting ahead with the Extended Fund Facility. Now, with that, do you think we are getting provided by the IMF in a sort of a lifeline help situation or a liability?
First and foremost, thank you, Prasansa, for having me here and for the TPS program and sharing a thoughtful conversation about a timely topic where the IMF has the delegation has recently concluded their visit as well, and they have ensured that the chief of IMF will be visiting Sri Lanka soon. So on that context, Sri Lanka's today's topic, more than sovereignty, I would say, like our we were already in the ICU, and after the little bit of economic stability, we were just transferred to a general ward, and again due to the Ditwa, again we have gone to the ICU. So this is the actual situation in a very crucial manner. So even though we have now Honorable Eran will give more scientific background behind that, I am just touching on the human angle. So Ditwa, not only Ditwa, post crisis have largely affected the Sri Lankans as a whole. It's not on an individual, not on a group, but as a whole, the entire 2.2 million people have been suffering of the aftermath of this entire crisis. So the lifeline they have given right now is to create a stability. So we must understand this stability should not become a leash to control the sovereignty of the country. So I always emphasize on the fact that the economic sovereignty is already, in a compromising situation of our country, because, the country cannot decide on the well-being of the people as they wish, because there is a strict guidelines. So after Ditwa and during the rapid relief is not, we have to consider it as a temporary measure to put a financial stability and also an economic discipline among the country. But unfortunately, I would say there are a lot of SMEs in the countries, or small scale businesses in the countries, or even small and medium scale businesses, and even the daily living of the people have been largely affected. When you just go, as I told you, I'm looking into a human angle. After this issue arises, with this gold price rising, people doesn't have cash in their hand. Most of the people are in the pawning shops, mortgaging or pawning their gold jewelries to accumulate cash, not for investment purposes, but to run their daily lives. So this is the actual situation the government should understand. The people are suffering. It doesn't matter for an average family when the IMF say your stability, your macroeconomics is good, your deficit rates have come down. That is not irrelevant for a person who is living in the village. And also a small businessman who is having a small kade, it doesn't mean that the central bank has brought down the digit for single digit by somewhere in 7%. It doesn't feel that. So if you wanted to take this issue, this relief to the people, so the people should feel the emotions. So I strongly believe the same government who had a lot of second thoughts about progressive measures which the previous governments had, and those who so-called proclaim that they are the blessings of this country and the others were cursed. So they should know and understand the emotion of the people right now and take necessary action. So that is my takeover in this entire post-Ditwa. So IMF is just as I told you, it's just an oxygen cylinder. If we are going to travel with an oxygen cylinder for our lifelong, that's up to the government whether they are going to put the burden on the people or they are going to bring reforms which will be suit and cater the current affairs and build the lives of the people again. That is my take on that.
Thank you so much. I think that was a very simple way of making sure that the viewers understand as well, bringing out the example how we were transitioning from an ICU to a general ward, and now we are back to getting up. Getting it a lot. And then I think the best person to get this scientific background is, of course, as Mr. Barath mentioned, is also you with your expertise. Now, when it comes to this situation, I'm actually posing the same question. Now, in this situation, Mr. Eran, I think with your expertise, you can give us an understanding as to the IMF coming into support to Sri Lanka. Yes, it's positive. But is it perceived as a lifeline support or rather a liability in terms of your understanding and how we have brought forward with this government?
Thank you, Prashant, for the question. It has there's a narrow way of looking at it and a wider context of looking at it. The first thing I would say is we have built a perception that the IMF is here by force. Not at all. These international organizations are not here by force. They are here on the invitation of the Sri Lankan governments. And it's not only this government, this is the 17th IMF program that Sri Lanka has entered into. It's not a proud history, but there are many countries who have gone without IMF, or maybe twice or three times IMF, but not 17 times IMF. And then some programs have been handled badly, that they have gone into debt default. This is the first time we went into debt default, and sometimes repeated itself. So it's like we push ourselves into a corner, and then we take the jewelry and we are forced to go to the pawning shop, you see. So even in finance you have different levels, no? You have banks, finance companies, pawning shops, and the village tough guy, who also can take your jewelry and give you some money very quickly, much faster than the banks, but it'll come at a certain cost and you might never get your jewelry back, right? So I think that we need to look at it in that context. And the other broader point I would make is people talk often about sovereignty, and I would say that we need to be careful how this concept is also understood. Now, I don't know whether you're married or not married, right? if you are unmarried, you can always think that I'm sovereign, I made all the decisions myself. Now, when you go and get married, like myself, right, and I got married while I was a student, very young, then have I surrendered my sovereignty to my partner? I don't think so. So I think it's a question of, how you understand. It's a relationship issue, right? And then if you are talking about Sri Lanka's economic sovereignty, I think that the United States president is learning it the hard way that even the United States is not completely economically suffering. Because sovereignty is to do, like I talked about marriage, is to do with partnerships. Economies, trading, investment are all to do with partnerships. Yeah. You see, and in that, the ideal situation is where you can get a win-win situation. You see, a win-win situation. That's the ideal situation. But sovereignty, if you're exercising a thing, is that the whole world has to fall in line with me. These are my tariffs. This is the way I will deal. Then with time you'll learn a lot of lessons, right? That it doesn't really work like that. So I think it's a question about how do we balance it, and with whom are we actually balancing it? Because that could be said with Sri Lanka's trade relationships with the West, and the US, and those were the discussions 20, 30 years ago. Today the discussions about what are trade relationships with India, what are trade relations with China, with the emerging powers, emerging markets in the world. So I would say that as a general, wider point, what is the best deal we can get in whatever relationship we actually have? So we invited the IMF, and this program is there, and this government has continued with the IMF program. Now the benefits of it are, right, it gives you a certain level of macro stability, because it's talking about, we have had budget deficits in our 78 years in more than 70 times. No primary balance, right? And a primary balance says without financing cost, where your expenditures are more than your income. And we've had that once in the 50s or 60s. It's the first time we had actually a positive primary balance. Then we had a positive primary balance when Mangala Samaraweera and I were in the Treasury. And then only now there's a positive primary balance in 78 years, you see. So whom can we blame? We have mismanaged the economy. Because if you are running a business, you want not a primary balance, you want a balance because you want to make a profit, right? It's how you basically run your economy. Right, so we haven't had that, and therefore the discipline has been forced through basically the IMF program. So basics are revenues must be up. The revenues are too down and costs are up, so you need to create a primary balance. Then the discipline is spending. So Public Management Act is brought, Expenditure Act is brought to control spending, and they put percentages on it, and Parliament has to basically approve a lot of things, right? Even on you were talking about two issues here. One is the extended fund facility, and the other is a rapid emergency funding facility. Even the rapid emergency funding facility has to be under Parliament's approval through the Public Finance Management Act. You can't ignore it. Government can't ignore it, and the IMF will insist that is there. So there's a certain framework, right? I would say the positives of being in the IMF program is your ratings hold up, because then the international markets think that you are financially disciplined, right? So when your ratings hold up, your credit ratings, your access to international markets, international finance, and so forth and so on. The negatives are, right, that you desire to spend on something which you may not be able to spend because you have pre-agreed on what your expenditures are going to be, percentage of GDP, etc., what your revenues are going to be, measured again in some way, and then you can't break out it. Then you get a cyclone. So Sri Lanka has had terrorism, it has had tsunami, and now it has typhoon, right? The 3 T's are all been here as our external shocks, right? And then you can't completely jump out of this, because then you have to break the agreement, right? But then you have to deal with it. So as Barath said, there is a challenge here, right? Because you have segments of society, right, who are really struggling, really, really struggling. And then you want to ease their living conditions. On the other hand, you have these constraints. So economies are about balance. So on one hand, you want to maintain the macroeconomic stability for the reasons I said. On the other hand, how do you cushion these people? So the rapid financing, emergency financing facility is allowing you some resources to do that. And then government set up an emergency fund or something where everybody can give. We can talk about that later, right? Whether it's successful or not, right? Was really to tackle that particular issue.
All right, I think both the gentlemen used very understandable examples in bringing out the picture as to how it is with in terms of the partnership we are having with IMF and how it is to progress with IMF, because it's substantially important in terms of the economic landscape and also after, or rather the post-cyclone Ditwa. I believe we can dig deep into the rapid financing instrument which was brought into the IMF situation with Sri Lanka after the cyclone Ditwa, and also how this is being used effectively by the government in terms of achieving a stronger economic growth or getting back to normal. So to discuss about this, I think before that, let's go in for a short commercial break. This is TPS, the Public Square on Other Derana News Channel. We are back with TPS, the Public Square on Other Derana News Channel. We were discussing as to how it is with the partnership we are having with IMF, and I think now it is time to get into the discussion in terms of the rapid financing instrument, because this was something that we left in terms of the discussion in the first segment. And I think first I'm going to direct this question to you. So now, given that the IMF has approved almost around $206 million in terms of the rapid financing instrument after the situation of the cyclone Ditwa. Now, do you think with this situation coming up and the IMF funding, of course, as Mr. Eran also mentioned, it is something that the Sri Lankan government requests and then IMF comes and supports with in terms of a lifeline, I believe. Now, in that situation, do you think now IMF providing us with this rapid financing instrument, other than the extended fund facility that we are continuing with, do you think that IMF do see that we are positive in terms of our economy, that we are getting back to normal? Is that why they provided it to us, or rather considering our vulnerabilities? What do you think it is?
As Honorable Eran pointed out, so it is not a forceful call. It's a voluntary call by us. And we should give commend that, the so-called government which opposed this entire IMF negotiation now are in line with the IMF guidelines. So that is a positive side, one must argue. And at the other end, this assistance which is given, after the Ditwa, the conditions are very low, and it is an emergency fund which is to stabilize the shock. So the IMF has, in my analysis, IMF would have understood the crisis situation in this country, and to as an emergency relief, they have given this lifeline. So that is one part. So we should be thankful to IMF on that regard. And also it is not, since they have deferred the external fund facility, that doesn't mean we are not out of the entire IMF equation. We are still there. So it is all about how we are going to govern. So that is the entire scenario behind this. So as I told you earlier, this lifeline is just a mere oxygen where we are going to take our businesses in due course and take the governance in a serious platform to bring reforms and stabilize the economy. Or are we going to just talk about the blame games of past demons and just lie around with that? It's our call. So what reasonable factor we have to understand is, now see, in the IMF context, the IMF officials most of them are economists. So they talk on the economic ground. So they are always considered about the spreadsheet, whether we are in the plus or minus or growing. And also thanks to the central bank, and they are also stabilizing the economy by controlling the financial institutions. But we have to see the human angle. So are we going to impose more and more tax on the people, on the same people, without increasing our tax net, just to a group of taxpayers? And are we going to rely on that is a big question, because in last year's revenue totally based on the vehicle imports, just a layman understanding that is. So is that thing is repeating in 2026 is a question. So I do see a decline on vehicle purchasing is happening, and also increasing in export market is also not happening. And ground level, when you go to village or urban areas, whether the local productions are happening on to cater the local market or the international market is a big question. And also, like in our country, before Ritva in High Forest, there was a huge vegetable manufacturing. So after that, now, so normally per week, they will send nearly 5,000 kilograms of vegetable from that region. I'm just giving an example from picking one place. Now the entire production has come down into 10 kilos, 15 kilos, that much. So this local production, how are we going to assist? How is this government is going to assist with these financial facilities to the people is another question. So we are surrounded with lot of questions, even though this rapid relief comes in, even though a macro stability is being established. On the human angle, the tax on the tax on the salaried employees and tax on the small businesses are comparatively increasing, and the production is coming down. And the credibility of the government between these taxpayers and local businessmen are now it's in the fragile stage. So it is the government, yes, they should convince the international players and also create an opportunity for the people to grow. So if this opportunity is not being developed in this governance mechanism, it is very difficult for us to keep the IMF targets and establish a sustainable growth rate. Or otherwise we have to be dependent on IMF for another few ages. The entire point of going to IMF, get us stable, get us our recognition, and it's a lifeline. Yes, it's a support from an external force. Then we regularize everything, do reforms, and stabilize our economy. That is our entire intention of going to IMF. If this is not been done and it is dragged on the cost of this entire Ditwa and the people, then it is pointless, whether we get rapid this thing or any other assistance on the other hand. So my take on this is very simple. Yes, we are getting international attention. Yes, we are getting more support from the IMF. And yes, we are getting low support from the international actors because, we have not requested. And there is no sustainable growth in the local economy among the local business people. So unless otherwise we resolve this, talking about coming into a developed state or establishing economic independence is a fantasy.
Yes, I'll take it from there. I think in terms of the rapid financing instrument, now the way it is being executed is something that people want to get in terms of the accountability and the transparency, because that is something people look forward to as well, because it was told post Cyclone Ditwa that these kind of relief measures are coming about along with the international donors, and then also along with that we have the 25,000 rupees being distributed, and then the 50,000 rupees distributed along with the divisional secretariats, and all these coming up. And also we have an additional IMF support, which is a big chunk, of course, and in that situation people wanted the transparency as to how it is being allocated, how it is going forward. Now, since now it is almost the second month of 2026. DITWA happened in December. So in this situation, what do you think is the transparency that government has provided in terms of the distribution or the utilization of the rapid financing instrument, the amount we got from it?
Yes, so there are two angles. One is receiving the money, other is spending the money. So on the receiving the money, they announced very early that they're setting up some kind of a fund about rebuilding Sri Lanka, and they appointed people from the private sector and so forth for this fund. Now, we don't have all the information of what actually has been received. From the information we have, and we have it only through the media and the public, it was about, if I remember, about 7 billion rupees or $30 million, which is hardly anything. I mean, in the context of the wider problem that the country is facing. So that's on the receipt side. So I don't even know whether the fund has been legally set up yet. I don't even know that, you see, because now you're hearing less and less about that fund. Then on the other hand, you have the international receipts, and the IMF one is one of those receipts. Now, when it comes to IMF, definitely it's accountable, and they have the accounting standards, and they definitely will look at the Public Finance Management Act principles that have been passed in Parliament. So you're answerable to Parliament. So that's where. Now, if you go that route, right, then you are answerable to the Auditor General as well. But there is no Auditor General. You see, so that will be a concern to the IMF as well. Every time I talk about this, they say, tomorrow, the day after it will get resolved, and there will be an Auditor General, and this discussion goes on. But the thing is, a country shouldn't be in that position. You see, it should be just continuous. You have when I became a head of an organization, one of the first things I had to address is who is going to succeed you. You see, and then a plan was put on succession. So plan A was, if I'm going to remain 10 years in it, then they were going to have 3 people, and they're going to bring somebody from outside as well, and then they will say, okay, we know, then when it gets into year 8 or 9, then they just take over. The other one is, if I get run over by a bus, then who takes over immediately? There's a succession plan, right? But and in the public service, you can have it, because there are so many public servants, and at a very, very senior levels, right? But still we haven't got an Auditor General. Now, because you're talking about transparency, and you're talking about, is the money actually going to the right people, etc., etc. The mechanisms are there in government. The question is, are the mechanisms actually effective, and are the mechanisms actually working? That's more the question. So I would make a general point. A general point there is about appointments, right? In the public sector, this is Auditor General is the one that's talked a lot. But if you look at today's newspaper, they are talking about the Attorney General as well. These are all the top positions in the country, right? So Barath is an attorney at law. He will know more about that. I'm the outsider looking at it from outside, and the President's Counsel Parinder Ranasinghe, from what I gather, has a very good reputation, right? And I saw the Bar Association also has, spoken on his behalf and all. So I don't know why we are getting into these controversies about individuals. Because, right, in Sri Lanka, one of the fundamental principles that we have been violating is the meritocratic principle. You see, the person who can do the job, the best person must get the job. We're too caught up in, what is his alliance, to which political faction is he aligned, and so forth. And as a result, the country is continuously suffering. And I think that the present government is facing that challenge as well, right? And we should just come to that meritocratic principle, and we should put that principle. Because then only, because transparency is not about ticking boxes, it's also about people having confidence in the system, people having confidence in the people, you see. So, I mean, you have to have ethical people. First principle, right? When I talk about people, I have to say that. Second principle is you have to have experienced people. thirdly only education. Education is not number one. It's ethics, it's experience, and it's education. Because you need to have people who know what they are doing, basically, because if they have never worked anywhere, you see. But if you look at our political culture, a lot of people in our political culture, those who are listening to me, you think about the city you are in, you think about your municipal council, right? You think about your mayor, you think about the others in there, or you look at your other local politicians, or you look at your members of parliament, or you look at the people who have taken executive office, right? Considerable number of them have never even worked. You see, so you have to definitely you have to, have experience. Otherwise, you can't execute things. Education is important, but I think experience is more important than ethics is absolutely important, right? I mean, we have in political parties sometimes people who have very bad reputations. Some proven, some only stories unproven. So I will leave an allowance for the unproven ones because there are lots of stories. But some proven. Because some have been convicted by courts of law in this country or sometimes overseas, right? Now, if a person like that comes for a job at this TV station, at Derana, right? The interview panel, right? If they are aware that a person has been convicted in a court of law or anywhere in a private sector, in a company or a firm, they will definitely not employ the person, right? But in politics, right, we are taking them and we are promoting them, right? So how can we change the country? So I go back again because of your asked and transparency question. Ethics, experience, and education is absolutely needed, and continuation. People who have to be appointed need to be just appointed. Don't keep any gaps or anything like that. Laws are there. Here the Public Finance Management Act is there, and there are other laws and regulations. Within that only we can answer that question.
All right, I think the 3 E's play a very crucial role in terms of the execution of the support that we are getting from the IMF. And I think in this current situation of the political landscape, it is vital for us to know these simple facts, I believe, because we look into the bigger picture of how this is being divided and distributed in terms of the support, because the 25,000 and the 50,000 was openly discussed and brought about in terms of the topic. And also there was a vast amount of international donors coming about, and also the IMF support. So that's a lot of support. But then again, when it comes to the distribution part, and I think in terms of the current government, transparency holds a bigger place. So I think before we get into the final segment of discussion in terms of the way forward with the IMF, let's go in for a short commercial break. This is TPS, the Public Square on Other Derana News Channel. You're back with TPS, the Public Square on Other Derana News Channel, and we are in the final segment of today's episode. So since we are looking forward in terms of the IMF partnership with Sri Lanka, I think it is crucial for us to know in terms of the extended fund facility and also the rapid financing instrument, these both going hand in hand, what is the way forward in terms of the economic stability and the economic landscape of Sri Lanka. So let me get into the final question that I want to ask from you, Mr. Barath. Now, in terms of this, looking into forward, what do you think that the government should essentially make sure that the IMF is bringing through its rapid financing instrument, let's say extended fund facility, all these coming up? What does the government should essentially proactively address in terms of utilizing these well?
Well, so it's like this. It's twofold. One is using opportunities. When you observe the geopolitics, there are a lot of things are happening around us. So recently there was a very good deal between India and EU. So there is a big opportunity for the region to get connected. I'm not saying they are to go and interfere in their affair. But if there is an opportunity on a strategic level partnership with India, and if we can provide some services or kind of logistic hubs, if we can negotiate and get an opportunity with them, because when that region is having a wide opportunity, we can easily plug in, but rather standing as a bystander. That is one. And also now we have an EU delegation coming up, and how we are going to develop the export-oriented businesses. That's we have to understand. And also we have to look into the east side of the world, how the ASEAN section is developing, how we can develop the connection with Korea and other countries. So these are the opportunities where the government can think on the outer circle than in the internal circle. Okay, let's getting a market opportunity with India or other countries. Now we have to grow the businesses inside. You talked about providing this 50,000, 25,000. Unfortunately, in my community, most of the people who have got affected in the plantation area have not got these assistance. I am telling with the responsibility. So, can we leave one sector to suffer and empower another sector to flourish? Is not a proper governance. As Honorable Eran pointed out, the ethics and the experience and the education matters a lot in governance. And here we do see there is a big gaps between, big vacuums between each sectors. So I don't blame the government. I don't want to put government in hot waters. But the thing is, they should repair the ground level issues first. While developing it, we should also see the opportunities around us. So if we are going to think about only we are going to depend on the production level or agriculture level economy, then we are going to face a big trouble. If we are if the world is growing on this entire technological service oriented market, then it is time for us to think about how we can expand. So this IMF is giving a credibility for us. Yes, I am supporting Sri Lanka. These guys are doing a fine job. So you can support. So this is a big support which Sri Lanka has right now, even after Ditwa. If we correctly use this opportunity and pitch ourselves to the international market, then it is an opportunity for us. Secondly, as I told you, the human factor. So now most of the people who have been affected has not been, the relief packages have not reached them properly. So our people, especially in Navalapitiya, the people who have got affected in the landslide and those who, the entire village has been submerged under the mud, the officials have asked again to go to that same estate. So I can name the estates even. But so these kind of gaps will, lose the credibility of the system. Yes. So the IMF has given a system balance. So it is the governance which is going to take us to the normal ward, to the ground. It's all depend on the governance. So I strongly believe and I strongly recommend, and our party, including our party leader Mano Ganeshan, are very much strongly supporting the government to bring back the stability. And we are reaching out to all the international actors, support the community as also support the nation as a whole. So this is a good opportunity for Sri Lanka to deal with our strategic partners and make this as an opportunity to grow.
All right, with that I am getting into Mr. Eran. So let's make it very short because we are running out of time as well. So in terms of the direction that it's the government taking about the EFF and also the rapid financing instrument, what do you think that now the government should do differently, given that the mission came here, gave about their report, and also as we are continuing forward in terms of the support that we've got from IMF?
Yeah, so the IMF program is to give macro stability so that the international markets will look at Sri Lanka positively. And it will give us an average growth rate. But really for Sri Lanka to get out of this, because in the next 7 to 10 years, there's going to be at least 1 million younger people coming into the job market. At these growth rates, we are going to have huge unemployment and social unrest. The only way we can overcome that is if our growth rate goes high. For the growth rates to go high, we need investment and direct foreign investment. To have the investment, we need to basically create the environment for the investment. So Sri Lankans living overseas are one of the biggest assets this country has. But for too long, they have been looked at as a liability. They are the biggest. They have education levels, they have technology for technology transfer, they have investments. Then Sri Lankans living here, priority should be is education, giving people either a university education or giving people a vocational training or giving people a professional training. So to do that, what the government needs to do is open the system. For 75 years, we have been made to believe that the government has to be the major supplier of education. Absolute nonsense. Open the system. Private schools, private universities, private vocational training, professional, just open system. International universities, international vocational training to set up in this country. Why can't we be the hub of education and training for this whole subcontinent? We have to think out of the box. This government has a super opportunity. Then create the environment. If investors are going to come here, judicial processes have to be much faster, because top businesses are not going to wait 6 years. They want it in 6 months. They want some kind of an answer. Public sector has to be reformed. There's no question about it. Because if you do a survey, right, I won't be surprised, but people might be surprised at how poorly the consumer sees the public service. It's not the politician or the government servant that matters. It's a citizen and the consumer that matters. That's very fundamental. So we need to create that. Then investors they need energy, right? Still issues in energy are not resolved and the cost of energy is too high. People want land if they are to come and do businesses in this country. Those issues, the board of investment, lots of issues to be streamlined. These reforms have to be done. State-owned enterprises, right? We have loss-making state-owned enterprises. Poor people that Attorney Barath referred to are being taxed, and we are funding those state-owned enterprises, right? Why are the poor paying for that, right? They need to be reformed. Open it up. Foreign investment again. What needs to be close it, where you can invest, get others to come and invest and help to manage it. If as you said, don't get stuck with DITWA and with the extended fund facility, if you really want to grow and want to get out of this and raise the living standards of our people, those reforms that I talked about, public sector reform, education reform, judicial services, making it more efficient, and then creating the investment environment, these are fundamental for us to get the growth rate from the average 3% closer to the 6%.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eran. I think that was a very fundamentally important aspect as well, that the weavers and also the government should perceive and understand, and also I believe put into to call of action as well, because that is far more important than just listening and absorbing, but rather putting it into action. So I want to thank Mr. Eran Wickramaratne, thank you so much, and also Mr. Barath Arulsamy, thank you so much for joining. Today's fruitful discussion was about how IMF, is it a lifeline or a liability, and it is something that we should decide and we should work around, I believe, in terms of moving forward in terms of the current political landscape. So don't forget to send your feedback to our email address at feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076805793. We will see you again with another episode where we discuss about the most relevant and pressing conversations that shape the political landscape of Sri Lanka. Till then, take care, be safe, and have a good night.
Beautiful people, top designer clothes, front row fashion shows. What you do and who'd you know inside the world of beautiful people. Champagne and roll up nose, breathing up some broken homes. Surrounded but still alone. Let's leave the party. That's not who we are. We are not beautiful. Yeah, that's not who we are. We are not beautiful. I lay true for hours last night and we made it nowhere. Now I see stars in your eyes when we're halfway there. I'm not fazed by all the lights and flashy cameras.